The teacher walked into the classroom and held up a simple number 2 pencil. And she asked the class, how much is this worth? How much is this worth? One kid said like 10 cents. Another kid said maybe a quarter, 25 cents. And the teacher said, the pencil has helped write books. The pencil has helped compose songs. The pencil has signed laws. The pencil has solved problems and changed lives. In and of itself, the pencil is just wood and a piece of graphite. But in the right hands, in the hands of the writer, or in the hands of the author, or in the hands of the scribe, the pencil is something far greater than itself. And then she held up the pencil again and she said, how much is the pencil worth? One author said this, you'll see on the screen. The value of a pencil isn't found in what it is, just wood and graphite. It's found in whose hand it's in. This brings up questions of purpose, like significance. Like, do you matter? Do you have a purpose? I mean, every honest human asks these fundamental questions of significance and purpose and meaning. And here's a few. They go something like this, like who am I? Like it's a question of identity, or a question of significance is, do I matter? Like, is my life important? I mean, every honest human asks this kind of question, like, am I loved? It's a question of belonging. Like, will anyone accept me for how I am, just as I am? Or a question of purpose. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Why am I here at this place at this time? And then if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're in this room and you've said, yes, make Jesus the leader of your life, and you've been baptized, it even gets a little deeper, I think. There's a deeper why. Behind all of this, what is the why? And if we're honest, maybe we ask questions like this. Me? Like simple me? God, simple me? Like, what is my purpose? I mean, I believe in you. I'm trying to follow you. But what do you say? Who do you say I am? And what difference are you calling me to make? And where do I belong? And why did you put me here? Do you want to use me? And when it comes to these deeper questions, when it comes to the idea of purpose and meaning, and when it comes to the idea of wrestling with our own brokenness and our depravity and our fallenness, I can think of no greater example to explore than David. David from the Old Testament, the shepherd boy who becomes a king. The only one in all of Scripture, in the entire Bible, the only person to be called a man after God's own heart. David. Do you know this? David is mentioned more than any other Old Testament character in the pages of the New Testament. There's more written about David than any other biblical character. Abraham gets like 14 chapters, Joseph 14, Jacob gets 11, Elijah gets 10 chapters. David gets 66 chapters. He's mentioned 59 times in the New Testament. There's over 1,000 mentions of David in the Bible. He was a poet. He wrote maybe 75 Psalms. He was a musician. He was a courageous warrior. He was a statesman. Yet, if you look at his life, he was far from perfect. I mean, he was flawed. I mean, he was messed up. He was broken. He was a sinner. And for years, I've been fascinated with this guy, David. I mean, when you're a kid, you're all like, ooh, David and the Goliath, and he takes the sling and he hits down the 9-foot dude and he falls, like, whoa. And then as you become older, maybe as an adult, you're like, God, like this is a man after your own heart, but yet he has obvious flaws. He is definitely a man who is a sinner with stone feet. Today we're beginning a journey together as a church. And we're going to look at the life of David. We're going to just engage in this a little bit chronologically, starting in 1 Samuel and working our way into 2 Samuel. And we're calling the series Flawed and Faithful, because he was obviously flawed, but yet he was faithful. And the series is really about purpose and meaning. And if you're asking these fundamental questions, which every honest human is, or if you're really seeking and maybe you're like, hey, yo, pastor, I'm not sure about this whole Jesus thing. Great are you, Lord. Oh, I'm not sure on that. If you're really seeking, or maybe you're here and you're like, man, I'm a follower of Jesus and I'm trying to figure out what it means to follow Jesus, then this series is for you. And so over the next few months, we're going to just be journeying this week by week by week. And as we begin today, I wanted to take a quick second and begin with the end in mind. Are any of you familiar with the book that came out years ago called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey? Famous book. And habit 2 of his 7 habits is begin with the end in mind. And the practice that he puts up, and I remember the first time I encountered it, it felt a little morbid, but it was like, hey, begin with the end in mind. Envision the end of your life. Envision your funeral. Envision your family and your friends and people coming and standing at the front and talking about you. What do you want them to say? Whatever it is you want them to say, begin to organize and sync up your life toward those values and purpose. And so that's the habit. That leads me to Acts chapter 13 in the New Testament, chapter 36. Look what Paul, reflecting back thousands of years, said about David. Acts 13:36. It's on the screen. He said this. Now when David had served God's purpose in his own generation, he fell asleep. He was buried with his ancestors, and his body decayed. Basically, he said, David, he was born. He served God's purposes in his generation, and when he had finished serving those purposes, he died. I think this is what I want said about me in my funeral, maybe in this very room. Greg, he served God's purposes in his generation, and when he was done serving those purposes, he died. This brings up an important question. Do you long to be used by God? I mean, do you want God to use your life, your time, your days on this earth to do something grander and bigger than just you? And if you do, then how do you do that? What kind of people is it that God chooses to use? I mean, on the surface, there's nothing about David that would have impressed God. I mean, nothing that would have caused God to go, whoa, look at that guy. I mean, David didn't look much different from any of the other Jewish boys his age. In fact, the prophet Samuel in 1 Samuel 16, when he first sees David, he simply says he was ruddy with beautiful eyes and a handsome appearance. That's all we have. The only physical description that we have of David. We know he was handsome, he had beautiful eyes and a healthy complexion. And he may have had red hair, but probably he was just more reddened by the sun and the wind because he's just spent hours out in the sun. David's outward appearance didn't set him apart in any way from anyone else. He was nothing more than a shepherd, just a young shepherd boy living in a little village called Bethlehem. Yet God, in effect, said, hey, you have what I'm looking for. You are the future king of Israel, and I'm going to bless the entire world through you. Why does God choose certain people? I mean, what kind of people, what kind of men, what kind of women does God choose? brings us to our key text for the day that Manny just read, and so I hope you have your Bible still open. And Paul, the Apostle Paul, is writing to the church in Corinth. So if you're a follower of Jesus, if you consider yourself part of the church, he's writing, and Paul knows that some of his readers are Jewish, and they're looking for some kind of miracle or sign to prove that Jesus is who he says he is. And then some of his readers are Greek, and they're looking for surface impressions. One's inner life meant little to them, and the Greeks were more influenced by brains and brawn and beauty. And so here's what Paul writes, and I'm going to pick up in verse 24, and we're going to walk through this together. So if you have your Bible open, 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 24. Paul writing to the church, he says this: "But to those called by God to salvation, both Jews and Gentiles, or Jews and Greeks, Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God." Okay, whoa, here we go. From a merely human perspective, the central message of the Christian gospel appears and must always appear as folly and foolishness. The folly turns out to be the very place that God is powerfully at work, calling out people to his name. Look what he says. To those, right? To who? To those. To those what? Called by God. So it's to those being saved, or to the believing ones, to those that God has called, to those of us who are believers, to followers of Jesus, to those who are saved. Listen up. Look what he says. Christ, Jesus, Christ is the Greek word for Messiah. So Jesus Christ, or the Messiah, is the power of God and the wisdom of God. Now, Paul is going to begin to talk about the effective work of the cross in the world. And Jesus, he's going to say, is the wisdom of God, precisely because he is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. That's Romans 1:16. Look what he says. Now go into verse 25. He says, look at the language here. He says, this foolish plan of God, okay, this foolish plan of God is wiser than the wisest of human plans, and God's weakness is stronger than the greatest of human strength. Okay, here we go. Paul is saying God shows himself to be both wiser, mind, and stronger than humans. Now, the cross of Jesus is going to accomplish two things at the same time, and I want to just unpack this for a minute, both of which completely overturn human logic and expectations. Here's the first thing the cross does. In the cross, God outsmarted his human creatures and thereby nullified their wisdom. Human wisdom expects God to save the world through what? Power, military victory, political influence, philosophical brilliance, or religious achievement. Like human wisdom says, might wins, the strong win, bow up. Instead, God chose a crucified Messiah, something the Jews considered a scandal and the Greeks considered absurd. See, God didn't win according to human rules. He actually changed the whole game. And the cross exposes the limits of human wisdom. The cross of Jesus says this: you cannot reason your way to salvation, you cannot earn your way to salvation, you cannot engineer your way to salvation, that God's wisdom is higher because his plan accomplished what human wisdom never could. Here's the other thing the cross did. Pay attention here, this is good. In the same cross, God also overpowered his enemies with lavish grace and forgiveness, and thereby divested them of their strength. Hey, normally, okay, think about the world we live in right now, okay? I was reading the news this morning. Normally, victory comes by defeating enemies with greater force. I got more bombs and more planes and more guns and more strength and more whatever. But at the cross, Jesus doesn't destroy his enemies. Jesus dies for them. He forgives them. Jesus absorbs evil instead of returning it. God's power in that moment looked like what? Weakness. One author says it this way, you'll see on the screen. He says, one can scarcely conceive of a more important or more difficult passage for the church today than this one. Why? Why is this so difficult? Maybe some of you are having a hard time understanding. Because we, the church, especially us, the church in the United States or the church in the West, we are still tempted to pursue success the way the world does. See, we tend to trust charisma and influence and wealth and politics and branding and impressive personalities and human strategies. But Paul says the gospel advances through something the world calls weak. Sacrificial love, humility, forgiveness, service, dependence on God. Ooh, a bad word, surrender. It's the message of Christ crucified. See, the cross doesn't just save us. It becomes a pattern or a model for how God's people are to live in this world today. And at the cross, God defeated human pride with wisdom no one expected, and he defeated evil with love that no one imagined. And the cross reveals that God's wisdom looks like foolishness. That's the word that Paul uses. It looks like folly or foolishness, and God's power looks like weakness, but both accomplish what human wisdom and power never could. Verse 26, he flips it. Remember, again, he's talking to the believers in Corinth. Dear brothers and sisters, that few of you were wise in the world's eyes, or powerful or wealthy when God called you. So to further his argument or to further his case that the gospel preached is in direct contradiction to human expectations of God, Paul's going to turn it to them. He's getting personal. He's like, hey, let me talk to you for a minute. Brothers and sisters, again, believers, followers of Jesus, listen. Look at what was involved in the fact of you being called by God. Who were you when he called you? I mean, who were you when Jesus found you? I mean, you remember who you were when Jesus found you? I mean, not who you are today, but who you were. I mean, what were you carrying? What were you hiding from? What were you running from? I mean, what shame did you think defined you, or what sin did you think he could not forgive you of? I mean, what part of your story did you think would disqualify you from being used by him? And yet here you are. He didn't wait for you to clean yourself up to call you. He didn't wait until you had it all together, because no one would be here. He didn't call a future version of you. He called the current version of you. He called you right where you are. And look what he says, 27. He says, instead, look at this language here. God chose, or maybe your version says, God has chosen. God chose things the world considers what? There's our word again, foolish, in order to shame those who think they're wise. And he, that's God again, he chose things that are powerless to shame those who are powerful. Here we go again, verse 28. God chose things despised by the world, things counted as nothing at all, and used them to bring to nothing what the world considered important. You see the theme in those two verses? Who's choosing? Do you choose? No, it's not a buffet. God chose. God chooses, here's the big idea, don't miss this. God chooses to defy and demolish logic and power and the recognized standard of this world. God chooses. And this is where we're going over the next few months. He chooses a guy named David, a young shepherd boy sitting out in the hills outside of a little place called Bethlehem. I mean, what about you? Think he wants to choose you? I mean, how do you position yourself to be chosen? How do you know what God is looking for? Verse 29, Paul says this: as a result of all of this, he says, no one can ever boast in the presence of God. It's like Paul is saying this, okay? And we'll put it in the Corinthians so no one's looking around here. But he's like, look around, Corinthians. Look around, church. You won't find many impressive people here. Why? Because no one can boast in themselves. They can only boast in God. And this, I believe, is a principle that we really find difficult. This is a principle I think we still struggle with because we don't want to admit this, but many of us are still a lot like the Greeks. I mean, when we look for people to admire, or we look for people to follow, when we choose role models or heroes, we are often swayed or impressed by things that are cause for boasting. I mean, who do we look for? We look for the beautiful people, right? We look for the brilliant. We look for the successful. We want the best and the brightest. We're enamored with the surface. And the superficial often impresses us far more than we would care to admit. But God says, that's not why I make my choices. I choose the nobodies and turn them into somebodies. And that, in a nutshell, is the story of David. How much is the pencil worth? In and of itself, it's a piece of wood with graphite that may be worth 10 cents. But in his hands, it's priceless. What kind of people, what kind of men, what kind of women does God choose and use? I mean, when God scans the Palm Beach County, when he's looking around West Palm Beach, who's he looking for? What kind of men and women can he use for his purposes? He's not on the search for angels in the flesh. He's certainly not looking for perfect people because there are none. He's searching for people like you and me. Many people like us, flesh and blood, broken, flawed, people who walk with a little bit of a limp. He's looking for certain qualities. He's looking for a certain type of heart, a certain kind of disposition. He's looking for some of the qualities that we're going to see as we unpack this over the next month that were found in David. Here's just a few things that we're going to see, and we're not just a couple things real quick. There was something in David that wanted more. There was something in David that hungered and thirsted for more. There was something in David that was not content with just the surface, with just the outward. There was something in David that didn't want just the TV God or the microwave God, but he wanted more and he wanted something deeper. And when the Lord sought after a man after his own heart, he's looking for a person who's striving to live a deeper life that's in sync and in harmony with him. He's looking for someone who's willing to sink their entire lives, to align their entire lives with him. He's looking for people who will say, God, what's important to you? Because if it's important to you, I want it to be important to me. God, what is it that burdens you? Like, what is it that breaks your heart? Because if it breaks your heart, can it please break my heart? God, when you say go right, can I be the kind of person that says, yes, I'll go right? God, when you say stop, can I be the kind of person that says, yes, I will stop? When you say it's wrong and I want you to change, will I be the kind of person that comes to terms with it because I have a heart for God? It's a heart that's sensitive, the heart that's being attuned. It's a heart that's striving to be in sync with God. 2 Chronicles 16:9 says it this way. It says, the eyes of the Lord search the whole earth in order to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. Ooh, that's good. I mean, what is God looking for? Not perfect. He's looking for men and women who have a heart for him, have a longing, have a desire for him. And that's why we're doing this together. It's why we're beginning a journey as a church, walking through this life of David. So God, help me to learn from David. Help me to learn the things he did well. Help me to learn the things he didn't do so well, God, so I can be more of a woman or a man after your own heart. It's why we've all gone to all the trouble to try to create as many tools to help you as we can. And we have these reading plans. We have these physical reading plans where together as a church over the next 17 weeks, we're reading through the story of David together. You can grab one of these. We have a digital version on our website. It's the why behind what we're doing because we long to create a culture and a community where it's not just one person or two people, but it's a community of people who are far from perfect, but they're striving, God, to be men and women after your heart. God, we're striving to sink ourselves close to you. The other thing that we really see in David that I think we really lack in the church, especially here in the United States and in the West, is David just had a realness to him. There was an authenticity. I feel like I've grown up in a church culture where it was kind of like just kind of pretend you got everything going good. Like dress a certain way, act a certain way, and just look good. And if you pretend, then that's good. But what we see in David is there's something real, and it's something raw, and it's almost a little uncomfortable, I think, for some of us, because it's like, man, he's being a little too much, David. I know we say we want to keep it 100, but why don't you keep it about 60? All right? And you see this pattern, and especially in the Psalms, as we're going to explore these together, you see this pattern in David's life where he just kind of tells God exactly what's happening. And then he remembers who God is, and he chooses to trust God even when it doesn't make sense. But there's this pattern, is like, how long, oh God? And he cries out, and then he'll say like, hey, look at me. Do you see me? And then he'll say, oh God, but I've trusted in you. And then he says, I'll sing, I'll worship. And David doesn't suppress his emotions, but neither does he allow them to have the final word. It's not, David's faith is not a check the box faith. It's not a like, oh, I'll fly in on a Sunday, or when's Christmas and Easter? I mean, it's in the weeds, it's in the mud, it's a get your hands dirty kind of faith. We're going to begin to explore that together, and oh God, may that be true of us. And David may have lived centuries ago, but I believe there are things we can learn from him that are as current as the sunrise this morning. And here's a couple things as we start this journey together. I believe it's in the little things and in the lonely places that we prove ourselves capable of big things. I mean, if you want to be a person with a larger vision, if you want to cultivate the habit of doing these things, it starts in the lonely, in the little, in the quiet, in the early mornings of the hour of the day. And that's when God begins to put iron in our bones and to strengthen us. See, the test of my calling, Pastor Greg, the test of my calling is not how well I do standing up here on a Sunday morning. It's how carefully I cover the bases Monday through Saturday when no one's looking. When there's no one to check up on me. It's in the little things and in the lonely places that we begin to prove ourselves capable. And as we begin to do that, God begins to give us bigger and bigger things so we can make a bigger and bigger impact for him. Here's another just kind of thought as we land the plane today. When God develops our inner qualities, he's never in a hurry. It's so un-American. I mean, when God develops our character, when God develops us into the men and women he wants us to be, he works on it through a lifetime, and he's not in a hurry. One author put it this way, you'll see it on the screen. It says, the conversion of a soul is the miracle of a moment. The manufacture of a saint is the task of a lifetime. It's in the schoolroom of solitude and obscurity that we learn to become men and women of God. It's from the schoolmasters of monotony and reality that we learn to be who he wants us to be. And that is how we become like David, men and women after God's own heart. I'm inviting you into this journey with us. I don't know what God has in store. I know there's been hours and hours and hours and hours of prayer. I know that God's word does not return void. I know that God is stirring and moving and doing something far grander than my little brain can comprehend. And I just want to be a part of it. And so I'm asking you to lean in. And I guarantee you, if you decide to lean in or to go all in, there will be things that will happen very quickly that will try to distract you or to sabotage you or to stop you. And that is where men and women who really want to see God push through. That's where we say, yes, no, that will not deter me. I am going to go all in. And that's the invitation. It's the invitation for me. The invitation for you. I know my life will get hard this fall. Every time we've attempted something like this, something happens. I'm ready. I don't want it to, but I'm expecting it. And so we're inviting you into something deeper. Don't settle for something surface. Go all in. And so can we learn from the life of David? So I'm going to invite you just into a spirit of prayer. Close your eyes. Whatever position, posture you want to get in, we're just going to create a space that's kind of free and open right now. And again, if you're newer, relax. It's okay. No one's going to ask you to do anything. But those of us who are seeking, those of us who are trying to go to a deeper place with God, sometimes we just need to kneel, and sometimes we just need to get on our face before him, and sometimes we just need to pray with other people. And so we're just going to create that space now for a few minutes. So if you're free to kneel, you're free to stand. There'll be people around kind of on the back wall that if you just want to pray with someone. It's also a time where we practice what Jesus did with his disciples. It says that he took the bread and he broke the bread. He said, this is my body, which is broken for you. And it says he took a cup and he held it up. And he said, this is the new covenant. This is my blood that was spilled out for you. So when we gather together, we remember that Jesus made a way by dying on the cross, and he took all our sin and all our shame on him so that we can be in this relationship with him. So around the room, there's these tables, and we take the bread and we dip it into the juice. Again, not as a ritual or a have to or as a hoop to jump through, but as a way to remember, to recalibrate, maybe to confess, to make him, put him in his right place. So I'm going to just pray a prayer, and then we're just going to have the music's going to quietly play for a couple minutes. And this is your time. And so my prayer, God, is that you'll speak. I pray even the hardest heart in this room, God, that somehow you would break through. I pray for the doubter that you would just show them you're real somehow today. I pray for that person that's hurting, that you would be the comforter right now. Pray for those who maybe are just full of anxiety and stress and overwhelmed, that you would just remind them that you are in control. God, to the one who needs to say yes to you, I pray that nothing would stop them today from saying, I want to make Jesus the leader of my life. God, would you continue to do and to build in us individually and corporately what you desire? May we be a community of men and women after your heart. Do it as only you can. So we give you this time now in Jesus' name.